turn off the music. All right. All right, what's up, Wraeclast? Wabachai here with my co-host, Hegemony, and also we have Nugiyen today. Good old Nugi. How you doing, man?
I am doing good. Glad to be on.
Awesome, awesome. So today with Nugi, we're going to be talking about a couple of things. We're going to be talking about theory crafting, its role in the game, its importance, and also solo and group play, and what I kind of think is being the support meta. Also, player retention and how that relates to racing and whatnot. And it might not be exactly like that, but we're going to go through these subjects. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, Nugi, I have a question about theory crafting. You are one of the players that whenever I look at your theory crafting, you always seem to do well with theory crafting. Like you put out your goal for a build and you seem to achieve it, which is it's really hard to do in Path of Exile. And I'm wondering like why you think it might be so hard for other players instead of versus yourself.
Well, it's not like it hasn't been hard for me. It's not like I've never made a build that didn't work. Because I've made plenty of builds that didn't work. Um, Pretty much for in order for you to make like a successful build, there's like a prerequisite of knowledge that you have to acquire, right? Like you have to know exactly what mechanics are strong and what are not so strong, and what are like what kind of mechanics that will work well together. So let's say you're making a melee character, like you know that you can do a lot of damage or whatever, but you don't have your survivability down. Like you don't know how to fix this problem, well then your character will never work because there's always this one issue that will always be the downfall. So I don't know. I just think that I've just gotten to the point where I've done so many builds and I've played the game so much that I've just gotten enough knowledge to like I don't know, make viable builds.
And overcome the shortcomings.
Yeah.
Well, so and I wanted to talk about this because as we all know, we have the upcoming 1 month event,
Yeah.
and a lot of players, including myself, we're kind of bored with the
Yeah,
game
yeah,
a
yeah.
little
No,
bit, just because
I
you know
get
it,
it. Yeah.
it's just that we've all kind of been through the ups and downs. We've all been through Flame Blast. We've all been through, Arctic Armor, through all the different metas, and we've gone through quite a bit of metas since the start of, since the live launch of Path of Exile. And it's kind of like, okay, well, now we're just going to keep doing the same thing, right? Like, we're going to just do what's meta right now, which is SRS, Flame Totem, Poison Arrow, Cyclone, things like that, Incinerate. So,
Very good.
yeah. Um, but I don't know. Like, do you think that it's possible that not? Well, it's obviously possible, but I don't know. I'm almost at a loss to describe of like what I'm feeling because just like, well, I can't do another build because if I want to be viable, right? If I want
Mm-hmm.
to go
Okay.
push the end game, what were you saying?
I just think the notion that there is only these select few viable builds is just wrong.
Right.
I don't agree with this notion. Um, because it, a lot of the time in PoE, what you see is just flavor of the month builds going on where something becomes popular and everyone jumps that wagon. Pretty much like it's often the most accessible builds that this will happen to. The more accessible it is, the more popular it becomes because everyone can do it. And then I don't know why, but it just becomes this thing where everyone like where the conversation goes like this is the only thing you can do, which is completely wrong.
Right.
I
No, no.
mean,
Oh, go ahead,
just
Edgy.
just to chime in, all those builds that you listed, I have not played. I've been playing for a
Yeah,
long time too. So
yeah.
Right. Oh, and I agree. I mean, I definitely think that the community or just we as a player base do tend to stick with flavor of the month builds for far too long, and we think that it's not something else that isn't flavor of the month doesn't work. I was
Hmm.
playing I'm playing low life spectral throw right now, pretty foolishly, and it's not very good. But it once it gets some levels and once it gets a little bit of work, it will probably be fine, and it's
Hmm.
perfectly viable. But
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know. It's just it seems very hard to kind of theory craft something yourself because what ends up happening is you just move towards whatever you know will work.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
there are
Go
a
ahead.
lot of the veterans that, they're willing to do all the testing. And, I think this time more than ever, with all the changes to resources, that was like a big one. Every skill getting adjusted, lower costs, higher costs, and then leech. That pretty much changed the way we theory craft builds. Now we resort to, used to be you could get like 1% fizz leech, and if you did like crit fizz damage, you were good. I mean, 1 to 2%, but now you actually have to try, and you're like, well, how many jewels am I gonna need with mana gain on hit? How fast is this attack manual? How in succession, can I get a lot of mana gain on hit through this one ability, or is it just slow and heavy hitting? Like, I think uh, the big component which makes a lot of builds fail is, its resource.
Yes.
And I feel like people just neglect it, or they'll get it to a really fine-tuned point where they can barely get by, but then as soon as they pop in that, you know 40%, 60% reduced regen,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, then they're like, oh man, this is clunky. Oh, it must not be viable or whatever. Instead of like accommodating and making swaps, with either blood magic gems, or
Hmm.
switching auras, running clarity, or running, switching out gear. People don't really like to be flexible. They kind of like look for that. What build can I do that's gonna handle like most map mods, so that I don't have to, stress out on chaosing it so many times. And
Hmm.
honestly, there's a lot of builds that are viable. It's just, for me, when I think about it, it's like, how many chaos am I willing to spend to reroll maps? Because there's definitely going to be some map mods you want to avoid. And the reason why Poison Arrow is so successful is because it's not, it can handle so many map mods. And the fact that, Temp Chains doesn't slow down its DPS, it's like all cloud DPS. So, I mean, it's very popular for a very good reason. But that being said, there are other builds that are viable. You probably just may want to spend a bit more chaos rolling into the map.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, I mean, the other thing about it too is that I think I think players are starting to realize that it's easy to not easy, but swapping out gems or swapping out certain things is completely it's a 100% like viable alternative. It's just like okay, well,
Hmm.
like a good example of this is anytime we swap in slower proj for LMP or GMP with incinerate, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's not really that doesn't make a difference if your build could do a map, but it's just like, well, I need more damage versus boss right now. So, swapping things out. The Fizz to Lightning gem is actually a pretty good gem when if you have uh, a physical crit build, but then you run into Fizz Reflect map. That's
Hmm.
something you could do to
Yeah.
negate the reflect. But I don't know. It's just the tree is so massive and the passive tree is so large and looks so complex that it's very very tempting to be like I mean, especially when the game brings a player in, the game
Hmm.
the game is like, hey, you could do whatever you want in Path of Exile. And so you see it and you're like, I want to do whatever I want. And you're like, well, I'm going to grab this. And as you're leveling, as you're learning, you're like, well, I'm going to grab this. And then it turns out it almost feels like you can't do whatever you want. Like you can, but you can't, right? Like you have to do certain
This
things.
comes down to what I was saying before. Like, there's a prerequisite of knowledge that you just need to have before you can start being this creative.
Right.
Because if you do not understand the mechanics, you cannot be well. You can be creative, but players have this no like they want to have the strongest builds, and they want to make them themselves.
Hmm.
after playing for not very long. And this is just not something that's gonna happen. At least not right now. Like because with kind of like the difficulty spike and everything, you need very refined builds to be able to create like to do the content you see on streams. I just think that like PoE just doesn't do well at like introducing newer players to theory crafting. Like it's never done well in learning the player. Like it's always been the player themselves who needs to learn, but there's a lot of unintuitive um mechanics and wording within the game that kind of like just puts like a wall between the player and the game that you have to overcome before you can really start evolving
Right.
the builds.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to it. And so I'm gonna actually go ahead and use this to kind of segue into the next thing. Right now, so recently I played Cyclone. I played Cyclone for the
Yes.
first time. Cyclone was pretty awesome. I mean, it was fun. It did a lot of damage. It was what I wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it got to this point where I would only want to run maps if I had a support player.
Yes.
And it's just like, so I wanted to talk about the solo versus group play aspect, and which is
Mm-hmm.
great because I'm kind of like hybrid. If I could play groups, I'm all
Mm-hmm.
about groups. If I need to play solo, I'll poison arrow it up, whatever, that's fine. But Hedgie is definitely solo player. And so I
Yes.
mean, what do you think about this whole solo versus group play, and what's kind of going on in Path of Exile right now?
What do
And,
I think, or what
well,
Nugi?
Nugi.
Solo versus group play. I think solo play is in a good spot. I think whenever I do a solo character, I feel like I'm just chugging along, like my builds work fine. The moment you start adding a lot of players into the mix and there is no synergy, it feels really bad.
Right.
It feels really bad because like if you ever end up on your own, things take like ages to kill, and if you have a support player, it goes like 8 times as fast, and that's not even an understatement. Like it literally just you go from clearing maps in 15 minutes to clearing them in two, just by having support players in there. Like if you're running like a 4-man group or whatever it is you want to run. So I don't know. It comes down to how Path of Exile works and has always worked. Because with the addition of these new super support players, and how much they've actually gotten buffed, there some of them maybe no they've got buff overall, like both curses and auras, but it's like everything multiplies of each other. Like you can make a build that doesn't run any auras, but will benefit tenfold from someone running auras. And so you don't run it, but they run it, and then you scale with all these other multipliers, and you end up doing like it's like your kinetic blast will then do instead of your 10k tooltip, it does like 150k tooltip because you have more red light, and that's just insane. But I don't. It's both. I don't know. It's hard to say whether I think that's a good or bad idea. I think it's a little bit over the top with how strong support is right now.
Right. You can hear me, right?
Because yeah, I can.
Okay. Hedgie just dropped out of the call. Just want to make sure it wasn't my end. Okay, he's
Oh,
back.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that.
There you
Technical difficulty.
go. Yeah, no, support characters, support builds are very strong, and they're pretty. Like I said, when it got to a point where I would roll maps. I mean, it was so good because I would roll maps on my Cycloner, and I'm like,
mm-hmm.
well, I can't do that solo, but I don't care if I have support, so I would just stash them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would just be like, I'm just gonna wait for my support player to come on, and then as soon
Yeah.
as he died, not in a map with me,
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Faggle, thanks a lot for that. But as soon as he died, it was like my progression kind of stopped. Because
Yeah.
I didn't want to bother. I didn't want to spend way more chaos on maps, and I didn't want
Mm-hmm.
to Like it was just support made it so easy, and support also seems fun to me. I mean, I would actually love to roll a support
Mm-hmm.
character. I've yet to do
Yeah.
it, but then the problem comes up is like yeah, you could find people to map with. That's pretty straightforward. But if you want to really level as support efficiently, you know, how do you level, right? Like you can't just spec support while you're leveling. But do you want to spend all this currency to respec support after you've leveled? It's
Yeah.
not really a legitimate thing to do.
Why not?
Well,
I don't see why not either. Like,
but I mean, at like the start of the league, for example,
yeah.
like say you don't have people to
Oh,
level
so
with,
you just wanna solo create a support character.
right?
Well,
Yeah, that's gonna be pretty
Well,
painful.
no, 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 no. What I'm saying is the hypothetical that you have people to map with, but you don't necessarily
hmm
have people to level with.
I feel like you could just transition. I mean, there's so many
yeah.
skills stand alone, like flame totem,
Right.
just something solid, firestorm, and then just transition your way. I think the problem with playing support is having a reliable group that you can trust instead of just like waking up one day and be like, all right, I need to find some people to map with.
Right.
Finding people that you can enjoy playing with, I mean, and finding the same goals within the group. Like, oh, I want to map this hard, or I want, mapping etiquette is a whole nother thing. I mean, I used to be a group player, like that's all I did. But over time, I got trust issues because number one, there's just so many things about group play that I really didn't like, and one of them was playing with people that their personalities I didn't really mesh with, or they had really bad mapping etiquette, like just beelining it to the middle, not staying with the group, not working around the edges, ignoring all the drops and just going ahead, just stuff like that just gets under my skin. And then on top of that, YOLO clicking boxes. I mean, boxes
Yes.
are an excellent way to die. So you need to build that. It's kind of silly to say, but you need to build that bond, like that trust. You're like,
Yes.
okay, nobody's gonna mess up, nobody's gonna click something, nobody's gonna start a fight when we're not ready for it, especially if it's dealing with beyond bosses and things like that. You don't need people doing, their OFP, if you guys know what
Yeah.
that means. I mean,
Actually,
that's
I
a
don't. Operation Flashpoint.
own fucking program.
Oh, okay,
They're
okay.
going rogue and just doing whatever they feel like, and that's the biggest problem. And that's why, without finding a stable group with the same goals,
hmm
and without finding people that you can trust, it's kind of miserable. And as far as solo play, there's like so many benefits, especially in this meta. Like number one, if you DC, you can come back to the map and clear it, or you can make a couple town trips if you want, if you're collecting something to craft later. And then another one is, we have all these cool ways to generate charges, but it's only on scoring a kill. And when you're in group play, you're fighting for
hmm
kills. So you have
Yeah.
like Innervate, I Spy, Blood Rage, things that rely on you scoring that kill to make your character feel and function like well.
hmm
Unless you have a conduit guy just feeding you like everything, which you should in like a proper group. But I mean, I think that incentivizes solo play are those unique supports and things like that.
The supports are just so strong. I mean,
They're strong, but like what happens when you go in a curse immune map? I mean, you got a guy that's heavily
that's
invested into
true.
curses, and I mean, I think it's important to not only bring auras, but you need to go three aspects to be a good support. You need to have curse option, you need to have CC, and then auras, and you can easily do all that with Whispering Ice. Whispering Ice is amazing for like
Yeah.
all three. You don't have to
I
do
think
damage.
I think there's with the whole what you're supposed to do. I don't personally think that the game should be doable with like just only one sort of group. I I really like Assyria for what it does because well at least in the beginning where there is like only a very few select builds that could even attempt it. There's not like you had to overcome some steep challenges, um, and like on Assyria like You can't. Well, you can. Can you? How is it? You can ignite. You can shock or freeze or any of that. Like there's like a lot
Mhm.
of things you can't do, and I like that. I just want more diversity in terms of those kind of encounters. That would be nice because right now, yeah, like it feels like if like, a support character needs to be able to do everything. Like your group needs to be able to do everything. And I think this comes back to again the what we're talking about in the beginning with viable builds. Like you feel like the only way to be viable is to be able to do every single map mod. Like you feel like you're left out if you make a build that can't do X or Y specific thing.
Mhm.
And so why should you make this build?
Right. No, yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that's just, and I think that's one thing that kind of going back to that discourages theory crafting because it's like, well, I have these in front of me. I have these options in front
Mhm.
of me. They work. They're tried and true. Why bother?
Yes.
Looks like we lost Haji again. I don't know what's going on with his side. You're still there though, right?
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
here.
still there.
Oh, okay,
I got disconnected again. I don't know what's going on.
okay, all right. Yeah. So, okay. So, in regards to the upcoming 1 month, though, are you
Mm-hmm.
planning on playing? Are you planning on doing solo? You planning on doing group? You gonna be support?
I'm playing. I've actually been contemplating doing some support shenanigans. Just taking the instead of just using it for MFing,
Hmm.
the Empire's Grasp, right? We've seen all this Empire Grasp ghosting stuff
Right.
where they drag the ghost through the entire map and then they kill it all, and it's been crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. And just take that to the level of just overall mapping and using it as a tool of XP gain. Because if you debuff everything or you have some auras, you're like an unkillable tank, and you can pretty much suck the entire map to you, and you just have a guy running after you while you pretty much just cyclone through the entire map, and he just kills it while
Right.
it's on top of you. Like
Yeah.
that's been one of my thoughts. So I am thinking about doing the 1 month and doing some fun like that.
You back edgy?
Yeah, yeah, I'm back.
Okay. All right.
It keeps fading you guys out, and then it just like disconnects me for like a few seconds. And it's hard to keep up with what's going on, and I'm trying to fix this
Did you
problem at the
hear what
same
he
time.
just said though?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No. That whole ghost suck cloning, whatever you want to call it. It looks cool. It looks pretty intensive, but I could see that being a really good way to kind of support because you're just dragging everything. It's just like kind of follow the leader, which is kind of what it is anyway, right?
Like the thing is with that build is that the only thing you require is the gloves. Everything else you build like pretty much a normal support character.
Hmm.
You just make sure you're like unkillable. So you take advantage of all the mechanics that make you unkillable. So you make a character that is you get 4 auras. That is more than enough. All 4 defensive auras, and you get like 7 or 8 whatever endurance charges. You pretty much become unkillable. You go life gain and hit on everything. I don't know. Like you should be to the point where literally nothing kills you, because on the other side, you have the guy running after you who will one shot everything. So it's not like stuff is gonna survive for long, but it's all gonna be in the same spot.
Right.
Like a lot of people, I think, overdo it sometimes with their characters in terms of going in one direction. And so you end up with these support characters that can't actually follow you because they're so invested in their support character and the ability to buff others that they themselves can't follow because they're too squishy.
Right. No, that's
And so
actually
it's like finding that balance in
yeah,
between.
that's a good point because I know with the guy that was my support character, I mean, some situations like he just had to avoid. He's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I can't even touch that. I'm like, well, I guess I'm gonna spin my way through this one. Like this is okay, like whatever, which
Mm-hmm.
just points to the power of Cyclone. Um, but yeah, no, that sounds pretty cool to do like the whole like kind of support with Empire's Grasp, which I thought those gloves were going to be much more popular than they actually are.
Well, the reason why they aren't as popular is because they don't add any damage to you.
Yeah,
It's the only thing it does is add a. They give you a utility. That's all it does. It's an extra utility that you can work with. And so the Shockwave totems we all saw in the beginning. Well, why would you even bother with the gloves when you can just get 6% crit multiplier from your what are those gloves called?
Malleus.
Face breakers and
Face
Malagaros are
breakers and
great.
Malagaros, yeah. Like for totem builds, even face breakers become better just because they get so much crit already. And so why would you ever say no to that when instead of sucking everything in, you just one shot it?
Right.
Yeah, and I
So
mean, good totem
that's why we're
placement
not
makes it
seeing.
relevant.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, going back to what we were saying earlier, when I just kept getting DC'd, we're talking about support and playing
Hmm.
support while being able to kill stuff. And recently, I've been playing my very first summoner. It was a classic summoner. I think that's
Hmm.
a great build to segue into a pure support too. Like
Yeah.
I was playing with Revenants and using Equilibrium and Dual Curse and you know just trying to keep my minions alive, trying to go up and debuff mobs. It really made me feel like a support class because I was just
Yeah.
sitting there maintaining the group. I mean, I did find myself moving too fast for my minions, and there's only so many times you can use convocation. Man, I just want that cooldown to be reduced. But I mean, it was really fun. But I don't know if it's necessarily my style of play because I always found myself running ahead of the pack always because I was just used to moving fast with like all my attack based characters and spellcasters just being the one dishing the damage. I think if I played a little bit slower, it'd be much safer. But you could find yourself in some very very sticky situations that when you're kind of squishy and all you really have is effective health like life and ES. Uh, you will run into some problems.
Hmm.
Yeah, you sacrifice quite a bit for most of the support builds, so maybe Nugi will change that completely with his if he
I
does it.
think well, like, with the support builds or like having a build that's viable and supportive as well at the same time, especially now, I think we're gonna see a lot more people going for or I haven't played since okay, so I haven't played since they upped the buff or the drop rate of Chevrons and Mjolnir and all that. How big of an impact has that been so far? Like, do you guys know? Like, guys know? Like, have you seen like a big change in the availability of these items?
I
Not
mean, not
really.
really.
I mean,
Okay.
it's kind of hard to tell with that
Lightning
happening at the
coils
same
went down in
time.
price in Tempest substantially,
Hmm.
but
Shafts have gone down a bit, but
Yeah,
they're still pretty close. But
but
lightning
there's like a lot
coils,
of people going out of the economy as well, like not playing
right?
anymore, and
yeah,
then they upped
that's a
it,
big
so
part.
it's probably like, yeah.
It's
But I'm thinking, because with my Chevrons build, for instance, I ran 7 auras and 2 buffs, and I had all but one cluster of aura nodes, and that character was like a beast for solo play at the same time. So you can make these characters. You can take advantage. You can just look at what will auras give me, and what can I kind of I don't know string together to where I have my aura build on top of another viable set of skills that I can use together to make like an even better build. Where I made the low life incinerator, which has been doing super well, um, and being able to buff anyone coming into the party. Like I've never had anyone complaining, um, grouping up with me at least.
right. Yeah, because you run haste, anger, discipline,
Mm,
a lot of auras. I mean,
yeah.
I
but
mean, that's
oh,
the thing with Incinerate. It's so strong mechanically. It doesn't need that much help, like offensively. I mean, let a pain attunement, let alone is probably enough just to help
Well,
Incinerate.
I think both the pain attunement and the fact that there's no resource cost.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the biggest things, and it's something I did in I did that in what's it called, the last expand or the last
Bloodlines.
Yes, with the 1.3, I had no mana cost builds there as well. One of the first thing I recognized with 2.0 is that no mana cost builds are going to be insanely strong. Like anything that can just circumvent resource cost is going to be some of the strongest builds you'll see, and I think they have been.
Yeah, it's just hard to. Well, it's not necessarily hard to get that no mana cost, but I don't know. Elrond jewelry is kind of hard to craft.
I mean, there's a
Yeah,
very few amount of abilities that can deal with no mana costs. I mean, a lot of stuff requires very very expensive supports, and the base on the gem is very very high at high levels. But
like
yeah,
there are ways of reducing almost anything down to the point where Elven jewelry is the only thing you need after that. If you're smart with your jewels, like jewels
Reduce
makes
mana. Oh,
yes, jewels makes just some builds ridiculous right now as well, like block and reduce mana. You can use that on so many things. It just takes a long time to like piece all these things together.
well, it feels like you also have to figure out. Yeah, it takes a long time to piece them together, but what is worth piecing it together for?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Incinerate is a good example of that. Obviously, Incinerate is very strong, but what else out there, you know, can do as well as that? Because like we said, if your build does essentially the same thing as the Incinerate build, except Incinerate does twice as much damage,
Yeah,
why bother? I mean, it's just you're kind of wasting your own time there.
yeah.
Not wasting time.
Go ahead.
when we're just talking about resources, I think some of the, I guess, failures I would consider are the ones that give you mana when you're taking damage, like battle rouse between
Mm-hmm.
Marauder and Duelist, and then you have like Testudo. You can see that GG is like trying eight. It's like an 8 mana game when you block. The
Mm-hmm.
GG is like trying, but there's no real incentive. I mean, in a game where damage is really high, especially with map mods, like you're trying to avoid taking damage.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what are those mana returns? They're pretty abysmal, and people want something to be, fluid and sustain and not have
Yes.
to rely on getting hit. I mean, let alone you're at the mercy of the enemy's attack time. Like if they don't
Mm-hmm.
attack fast, if they attack
Yeah.
slow, like you can't expect returns. I mean, even if you have block cap, it doesn't matter if they're like, 1 sec or 2 second hits and then
Yeah.
they don't even land. So that it makes those builds very very clunky, and I don't know. It should be revisited, but
Yeah. It's for the same reason why Reflect builds does not work in this,
yeah,
like in the current state of the game. I
the amount
think
of
some.
go ahead.
Mhm. I think with the whole mana and because this also the whole block gaining when taking hits, it's the same thing that happens with the mana leech right now, just in a slightly different fashion. Like with mana leech, it's really good when there's a lot of enemies. It really sucks when there's only one.
Hmm.
Like you get these. It's a different it's a different way of regaining resources, but it I would feel like it sucks just as much as taking hits in terms of clunky playstyle, because you always run into these issues where you just stop attacking. And so I think they really need to revisit on how we, in general, generate resources. Um,
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, because even if you're like hitting like when you're actually throwing out projectiles, let's
mhm,
say there's not any projectile or any mob to hit. I mean, that's a huge thing. You need to be able to cover that buffer, of like, hey, I'm throwing like a GMP fireball
mhm,
and I didn't hit anything. Oh, and if you're like relying on leech so heavily that that's your way to sustain, then it makes the build very underwhelming. So
yeah.
they need to be very generous at how you attain your resource, not only through regen, because regen just seems like so powerful, or instant gratification with like mana gain on hit through
Mhm.
attacks, only available through attacks. And I think that should be addressed or adjusted.
I think they could come a long way of making resources just more available. I think resources, it for me. having the resources to actually make a build work is just as important as having links in your tree, like or in your main skill. Right? Like you can have a 5 link or 6 link. Now the problem has become resources, in my opinion. I think they've done really well into making sure that everyone gets their 5 links pretty easily now. This
Right.
is like the stable in any build. You get your 5 link and then you go from there. Like there's like it doesn't take too much to get to that point, but getting resources fixed can be nearly impossible with some of these fast attacking builds that have like a high base mana cost. On a lot of monsters, sure you can be cute with duels, you can be cute with mana leech, but then you always come into this moment where there's only one monster left and you run out of resources and you kind of like to stand there and you don't want to play the build anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that like kind of that awkward, like, oh, my build was working, but now I have to just wait a second. Like, so,
Yes.
those are the times you remember playing that build. You're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, there's that lull in the combat when I was and I had to wait 15 seconds for my natural regen to kick in and
Yeah,
overcome that.
perfect example of that would be like trying to run Ice Crash on a foil. Like swords are notorious for
Yeah.
being really fast, and then that skill is very expensive, and you're just like boom, 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 and then you're just like swinging blanks. You're just like auto attacking, and it's very very underwhelming. And it's like, oh, this sword is like 300 and some 380 DPS. Like, how can I not use this? But I mean, it's a big thing. Even with mana gain on hit, it's not going to save it with like against one target.
Right.
But they have to keep these things like in a certain way, like so that it makes blood magic appealing or it makes it
Mm-hmm.
viable decision. Like EA's mana cost is so high, that's one of those things that draws or points the player into the direction. Hey, you probably should pick up blood magic if you're going to run this
Mm-hmm.
skill, or it's going to be really really hard to run it on mana. But
I
what
think really what they just need to figure out how they can make um, some of these more gimmicky ways of regaining mana, making them more viable on like all levels of play. Because I think that there should be an investment to gain resources. There's an investment in blood magic, there's an investment in mana leech, but blood magic always works. Mana leech doesn't always work. Mana gain on hit doesn't always work. There's only like a few select skills where you can reliably use mana gain on hit or ES gain on hit, which is like, for instance, Cyclone. It's one of the only skills that will have enough attacks on a single target to sustain itself by hitting continuously. Where like you can keep increasing the attack speed. Like let's say you go dual foil with like weapon range, so you always attack and you get these even mana or ES gained on hit, and you can just have like a infinite resources even on a single target. But it's just because that Cyclone has so many attacks per second, because like it hits twice for every revelation, and you can make it longer, so you have control over how much mana you gain back because you can just cyclone over a longer period. But then we have all these other skills where are completely static to where you can only ever hit 3 times and you run out of mana.
Yeah, like a multi strikes, heavy cost. And that's
Yeah.
the thing. I think that's why I made Cyclone so popular because with the leech changes, they gave you the sum of, the damage you
Mm,
do over
mm,
time. That's like huge. That made things like Molten Strike leech relevant, Incinerate leech relevant, all those little things that before we were in a meta where it rewarded like heavy hitting stuff and you get great leech. Now it's just like, Cyclones is that much more appealing because you're going to get all the leech credit, regardless of how little or how fast or how hard
mhm.
and how slow. It's all returned, which is probably why probably contributes why it's so popular and so it feels so good, as an attack based build.
Mhm.
But I wanted to pick your brains on Rory just recently released a development manifesto about skill gems in general, and specifically an upcoming one called Shrapnel Shot. And
Mhm.
I wanted to hear your guys' opinions on it before I give mine.
Well, so basically, shrapnel shot was like a cone and a like a line. I'm not I don't entirely remember the skill. It's basically just covering a certain kind of what do you call a certain area that hadn't been covered of the you have like the bow types with like a linear and the spread and the
Mm.
whatever, and like this was just the like it looked pretty cool, like I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
um
one
it
thing that
hits
I
instantaneously, right?
yeah, uh,
Seemed.
one thing that I noticed, the biggest function of the skill, that it's not like any other skill. Whereas when you deploy the shot, the
Hmm.
AOE is instantly deployed, regardless of if
Yes.
there's a target or not. That's super important because
Hmm.
they changed projectiles, with this past challenge league or this current challenge league, so that if the arrow or only one projectile can hit, and where you have
Yes.
like ice shot, which only has the cone after the fact, after you hit it. Like GMP
Hmm.
ice shot is not going to deploy four cones in front of you. You can only hit one target and you'll get one cone, unless there's four targets in front of you, and then those are all deployed cones.
Mm-hmm.
This one is like gives you all of it. So I think
Yeah.
that there's GMP potential because of AOE overlap, and that
Mm.
will like pseudo shotgun, but the actual projectile won't. And to me, this skill screams point blank. But
Yeah.
we're in such a high damage, part of the game. When you get to maps and you're running map mods, as a ranger on the right side of the tree, usually, you know, you don't have that much HP. Your tankiness is, it's limited. It's kind of sketchy. You don't want to be next to like a Rakengo or a Devourer with sub fizz, trying to point blank this guy. So I think the possible solution is to either put them on a range attack totem so that you can
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
utilized point blank, or using it on a trap with like a GMP and using it as like a monster shotgunning trap, just to like as a single target, maybe to complement your lightning arrow build instead
Hmm.
of having to run frenzy or barrage or your typical, single target arrow shots.
Oh, my thoughts on shrapnel shot is just it looks like it makes a bow character a melee character, and that's pretty. Like you said with point blank. I mean, that's like super obvious, right? You see how the cone works and see how it interacts from the target that it's fired from. But why do I want to do that? Why do I want rear guard? You can't get block.
Okay.
Go for it. Yeah, go.
I will tell you why you want to do that.
Okay.
You will want to do that this the moment the skill, the damage effectiveness, and the overlapping mechanics are as strong as Incinerate. The moment that happens, you do that instantly. Everyone does it because this game is all about figuring out what has the highest damage effectiveness and how can we like keep putting multipliers on top of each other. Surviving, people will figure it out. I can guarantee you. I can make a bow build right now that is super tanky. All I need is some kind of skill that will actually have that will have the mechanics that will support that build. So it's more if the skill is strong enough, that's gonna be the deciding factor here to whether or not people will run it. Because people can survive, I can guarantee you. You can make super tanky bow builds where you get you can almost reach the dodge cap, uh, right? And you can get 8,000 life on top of that. And so if you have enough damage after that as well, then you're good. It's just hard getting that damage. But if you have overlapping effects and point blank, and you have a skill that's like instantaneous damage, I'll guarantee you that will be popular. But it's all about what is the damage effectiveness, or what are like the damage and how the mechanics behind the skill. That's gonna decide whether or not the skill is gonna be good.
Yeah, we haven't seen those yet at all. So
Well,
that's
I
still
mean,
yet to be seen.
yeah, I mean, just to brush up on some of the points that Nugi made, like, dodge and stuff. When you're I don't know, the mob that I hate, or the mechanic I hate the most,
Oh,
are
here it comes.
volatiles.
Here it
Yeah,
comes.
volatiles,
Mm-hmm.
shit all over dodge and evasion and smaller life pools, and something that's gonna reward point blank play. You're gonna want to have all around tankiness, not only evasion, not only decent amounts of physmit, and I mean, The problem I see that could make or break this skill is the cost, because I think range attack totem is a 200% mana multiplier,
Mhm.
and trap is also, I think it's a 130 or 120, and then on top of that, they don't leech. So you're gonna have to be able to throw these things and have mana behind it, either regen or mana potion. So that already is it could be a really really huge drawback if it's too high. And from what I've seen, with all the bow design skills, elemental just seems to cost more than physical. You have split arrow and tornado shot, dirt cheap. Only physical
Mhm.
one I feel like is super expensive is frenzy, but frenzy can go either LE or fizz. But you compare those against lightning arrow or ice shot. Burning arrow is relatively cheap, or explosive arrow. Those are all expensive. So I worry that this skill may come out and it's just like it costs too much, regardless of how strong and
Mhm.
how much damage it may give with the point blank payload, which I think there's a lot of potential. I think you really need to they need to have it needs to have a cheap cost, seeing as how range attack totem is 200% mana multiplier alone, and then trap, you know not leeching is going to be a hard uphill battle. So hopefully it comes out and it's cheap.
And
Mhm.
hopefully, range attack totem is in the skill ecology that Rory was referring to.
If range attack totem will actually, if this is gonna be a good skill with that, and we have overlapping AoEs, you're gonna see the price of what's that jewel cost? Or the jewel called? The
Rain of
one that
Rain of
Splinters.
splits.
Splinters.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You're gonna see that going up.
yeah,
Buy
that
him
that
That
now.
could be that could be bonkers. That could be
yeah.
crazy.
Buy him now in Tempest. I have 5 of them. Joke's on you. Perm League HT is dead. Okay.
Another thing that's worth noting is this mechanic. When I like watched it in slow mo, it seems to have pierce when enemy is slain. So it's like 100% pierce chance if you can kill an enemy. Although
Mm,
I think the arrows will be more of a novelty thing. I think the main focus will be on the cone, and
yeah.
the damage potential will be there. I think it's just I
It
don't
could
know if
be
it's
a high damage, what's it called, projectile, and
yeah.
like low damage cone. And so you could see people just taking out GMP and putting in something else for single target,
Mhm. I wonder
and
if
just like
the
even fast
arrow.
approach and just shoot it like from afar. And there you go. If you have a hard boss, you just swap that around and you have a skill, or you
Or
just
what
have
if
a
it
single
has
target.
far shot on it? That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So, but you guys were talking about switching out a gem and whatnot. I think point blank is kind of a confusing mechanic for people. Say this does work with point blank, which obviously
Mm-hmm.
it's probably going to, but it'd be really nice to know the actual ranges of point blank and like when the damage falls off, right? Because it's just like, oh, when it's near you, you get is I believe it's 50% more damage,
Yeah, yeah,
and we have a support gem for it too. But most people are going to be going for the passive or the keystone, but
yeah.
like not knowing that range of when point blank is effective and when it's not, for me, it makes me hard to justify doing it because I want to play the build effectively. I
Mm.
want to play it efficiently. So for me to justify taking point blank, I want to always make sure that I am right in the face of the mob, and
But
that's kind of problematic in my
I think
opinion.
that's
Even if you are
the
tanking,
I think that's the fun of it though. It's like you have this curiosity. You're like, oh, I wonder how effective this thing is. I better try it, check it out. Like let me see like how good this is, or let me fine tune my play so that I'm always getting that damage bonus. And I think it's good for that player to go through these little trials and like testing. Essentially that's what makes the game so fun is when you have that answer. So point blank having that kind of unknown, like what constitutes close range, and when is it what is the threshold at which it exceeds it. I think that's okay that they don't give you that piece of information.
it's okay for the people who want to spend the time testing it and really playing through it.
Right.
But someone had mentioned earlier in chat, a lot of people come to Path of Exile, and one of the problems with it is that they just want to play, they don't want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see that passive, and it. I don't know. It's kind of it could be a noob trap, but then it can't be a noob trap, right? Because you have someone that's like, well, it's closer to me because I move forward, so I should be doing more damage. But then, to really benefit from it, you have to kind of learn those ranges. And since you don't have any sort of like indication, because if you one shot something at point blank range, like quite literally point blank, but then you one shot something with you 2 steps back, you don't know what your damage was. It just happened, right? Like it's a burden of knowledge that's really hard to understand. It's really hard to comprehend how point blank actually works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
But
go ahead.
no, I like this is something that's gonna like divide like the community in terms of whether it's good or not, because I know that there is a part of the community who wants to explore, who wants knowledge to be like hidden, and that you have to go out and search for it and figure it out yourself. A lot of PoE comes down to figuring it out yourself, and then there's the other side, um, who just wants to know stuff, right? Who just wants information to be there, the knowledge to be there, instead of having to go through all these hoops of testing for everything to figure it out whether or not we can even use this in the first place. Because like making a character in PoE it takes a while for you to get to the point where you can even test some of these things.
Hmm.
And so if you have to go and test it first, well, then you already invested a lot of time, and that's not like it. You have to like kind of decide which route you're going.
Now,
For the most part,
what's worthwhile
yeah,
for you?
I mean,
yeah,
but don't you think like, especially now, testing is better than ever because you already have characters that you already leveled, and you just
yeah, yeah.
log over and just swap a couple gems. And I mean,
Mhm,
even if at a level 1 you could see, the potential, and you can see how mechanically strong, or if it's going to be a problem with resources. I mean, you'll be able to find out pretty quick. And like what Wabachov was mentioning is, while new players might not be drawn to testing and things like that, yeah, it's because they have, or people that have limited time, they don't have time to test stuff like that.
mhm,
I think it's important to have, the players that have the veterans that have been playing PoE and play PoE a lot, that they have
mhm.
something to, go through and explore. So it's something for everybody. It's like, I think the transparency, and with point blank, it's okay. And I kind of see what the developers are trying to do is shift people over into a different area of the tree, but without necessarily telling you point blank, haha, but like up to your face and saying, hey, go try this now,
Mhm.
like, this
Mhm.
is, hey, we're just introducing this new skill, and this is how we're thinking about implementing it. And then, players go and try to make it work, and try to see if they come up with the same things that the developers want you to explore.
Like I think personally, that kind of the fun about PoE is just making builds, right? It's just putting all these things together and then seeing it work. Um, I'm not sure if I think that hiding too much information to begin with for you to explore. I don't. It just feels like a boring way of playing the game where you have to figure the mechanics out of the skills. I would rather figure out bosses, right? The problem here, as I see it, as it for a developer, would probably be that it's more expensive making a lot of new bosses, new encounters, and all that all the time. But I would much rather just see like a slew of like encounters coming into the game and just a lot more transparency on skills. Like everything is like gated behind knowledge, it's gated behind this and that and RNG and currency and so on and so forth. And every time they've like eased up on that, I've seen that as a positive for the game. Like with 5 links and 6 links and 4 links and implementations of masters and everything, it's just been coming into the game and making things more transparent and easy and overcoming these burdens of getting to the point where you can make your build. Every time they've done that, I feel like it's been a positive. So retaining information, I've never been a fan of, and like keeping like the newer players behind these boundaries. I don't know. I just don't think that is the correct way to go. I know some people like it, and I
Yeah.
think it's a good discussion to have, but I just don't feel like it's where I want to see the complexity in the game, and to where, because it's kind of it's just it's it seems like just it's just making the game more difficult to understand, and
I mean,
for
I kind of disagree with that, but
mm,
mainly because the game is overwhelming enough for new players. There's so
hmm
much shit for them to explore that it's important that people that play this game, for a long time, they have something to do.
hmm
And it's exciting when even these players that play for 2+ years are still discovering things like that metacrafting thing. That I thought that was amazing, even though I don't participate in
hmm
things like that. But stuff being found, I think is very exciting. I think new players have more than enough on their plate that when I encourage new players that come to Path, I tell them, don't worry about coming up with your own build. Don't worry about being,
hmm
super edgy. Just copy somebody's build and focus on the mechanics. Just like what you were saying, it's so important to understand mobs mechanics, the threats, analyze the auras and how they scale, and focus on your gameplay and your micro. Then dabble into possibly learning the skill tree and becoming familiar with how effective certain pathways are, and then maybe look at skill gems, and then I would say last look at the uniques and see like what they enable. But people try to do that all at the same time. They get turned off. They're
hmm
like, oh my god, I'm a failure, I'm gonna quit this game. And I think you just need to take it piece by piece. And
mm
I think I understand that there's a lot of satisfaction in like coming up with your own build, and there's a lot of reward there, but you know you got to take it piece by piece. I mean, people have been playing a long time, like Nugi, for example. When you play this game for such a long time, you know you you get very familiar with how something feels, and then you make adjustments just by reading notes, like this skill is done this,
hmm
or the
hmm
mana cost has been reduced on this, or
hmm
this proliferation ignite, or not, I shouldn't say ignite, but proliferation has changed. And an older player is going to understand without even really having to play. Sure, he might want to go back and test to see how much it actually affected, but he's going to have a understanding without having to roll the character of what this is going to
mm
impact and the potential. But if we make it so transparent and there's like nothing to explore, I think for players like anyone who's been playing for over like a year and a half to two
mm
years, it could get very very dull. And you know I like knowing that there's still stuff there out there that's unexplored and could possibly be great. And with the addition of new skills and new
hmm
encounters is a whole nother thing. I really like what Nugi said. They should focus on that. And I think just looking at the previous ones that they implemented, they're always looking to debunk cheese. And I think there are a couple checks that the developers have to go through. And number one, off the top of my head, is SRS. Like, when we have this RP and these transition phases, like, is this an opportunity for SRS just to ramp up and just, as soon as it spawns, and, you just murk the enemy?
mm
Or, I think that's like a huge thing. That's why we see huge AoEs as Malachi comes up, he goes boom, or, he
hmm
slams and vault. There's like a lot of AoE mechanics, and I like that, but I think it gets a bit expensive, when you're dealing with graphics. And I think they've set a
hmm
new standard of, mechanics and encounters, and it's pretty high. So I worry, how high they're setting the bar to incorporate new boss fights and things like that.
I thought there was more on that for a second. No,
hmm
but yeah, like I agree. Having these new bosses that come in that introduce new mechanics and then have them be more intense. That's all great. Like Malachi is a fun fight. It's not fun if you're colorblind, but it's a fun fight otherwise, right? And Ziri was a really interesting fight, and especially having those mods on her that's cannot shock, cannot ignite, cannot freeze. All those things. Or does she reflect curses too? I can't remember what she does. I've never actually
I'd
done
be
Ziri,
I'd
but
be interested in knowing the statistics of how many people in this pairing of challenge leagues are using 5 links and 6 links. I mean, I feel like the accessibility of both of those have gone up tremendously. And
hmm
like Nugi said, as they give you more tools, I feel like the developers have more freedom to up the ante. Like while it seems like you're getting, 5 links and 6 links galore, you're also getting increased difficulty in the
Mm-hmm.
encounters. So it's like a shift up, like a little stealth shift. But you get easier accessibility, but they're gonna make the game harder.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good thing. I don't
But
know
is
what do
it
you think.
easier accessibility to experienced players, or is it easier?
Even
Is it
newer
No,
players.
no, newer players get to play around with these 5 and 6 links now
Yeah, I
in a way
right?
they haven't done before.
right.
I get that. I think they're easy, but it's just like how easy is it to really get a new player to come in and get a 5 or 6 link? Because
Very easy.
I know it's easy. Like I get that. Trust me, I know. But what I'm saying is like let's just say I have my girlfriend come play Path of Exile, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, here, you know what? Here, you're level 60. Get a 5 link. How easy is it for her to actually get a 5 link, right? Like because some people they'll message me for trades. I had this guy message me in a trade yesterday, and he goes, "Here, man, I really need this Calms primacy," and he's like, "I'll give you everything I have." He was like, "I'll give you 3 chaos, 3 alchemy, 2 blessed orbs." I'm like, man, like just have it. Like you're obvious like because another thing is people they don't realize they have as much currency as they do while you level. They
Mm-hmm.
don't stack their alteration, or they stack their alterations, but they don't realize that they could trade all that up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they might have like 2 exalts worth of currency, but they think they have 5 chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and my point is like how for a brand new player, although things are more accessible, like does it appear easier for them? Do they realize how easy it is to get these things?
No.
And they don't realize how difficult it was before. That's all I'm
Right.
really saying. Like, yeah,
I
we
agree with that.
know that it's easy, but that information is not so clearly visible to new players.
I think PoE really hasn't done anything since I don't know. I can't think of anything where I really thought that they did anything to like really enhance like information for new players. Uh, since I don't even know, like I can't even come up with a point where I can remember that they made like it
The
easier
last
for new
pairing,
players.
the last pairing they did the tooltips for when you're leveling up the quests. The little exclamation marks
Oh,
that was
yeah, okay.
implemented. Hey,
Okay,
you
so
should
the
put this skill
questing.
gem into this bow,
Oh,
or
that's right.
yeah,
That's right.
that was like pretty huge. It's very little, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
huge because that was the only thing we've seen in like forever.
hmm
But
I think
other
they
than
could do a lot better in
yeah,
terms of guiding players to where they want to try and explore.
right,
You don't have to show them straight away, but you want to incentivize them to go out and explore. You want them to want to try and figure stuff out, want to try and use these things, want to try and like trade or whatever it is. Because if you want to trade, how do you trade in this game right now? You go into the trade channel, you just see like a slew of fucking spams, like just like a wall of spam. Go into trade one, just a wall of spam. You just click that off again. Fuck this. I don't have time for that. That's too much. I can't figure this out.
Right.
Okay, what's my other option? And go on the forums. Okay, right. The forums right now is just like an index mess. That's all. You see just
Mhm.
thousands of players indexing the stuff. You go in, you see what can I buy, and it's just one, 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 one. Like everything is listed one by one,
Thanks,
not even with
acquisition.
a price.
I mean,
Yes. And so, okay. So what do I do now? Okay, maybe I go onto a stream and check that out. Hey, can I buy something for you? Get no response. Okay, that didn't work.
this is awesome.
Just okay, you just like ask around, what do I do? Oh, you have to go onto this site and you have to install this program and to trade and wait, what? So I have to go onto a third party site, I have to go here. Okay, I have to like and then then they finally go to PoE trade. They message the guy, player's not online. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
like I've gone through Houston bows and I'm still not successful
And
at
that's
this.
assuming that a player will spend that much time doing all those
Yes.
things. Like most people will stop as soon as they hit that trade and they see the wall of text and they're like, well, whatever. Like most people will stop there, and that's something that I've actually like I brought up on my stream personally, and I've tried to talk to people about. But I feel like Path of Exile, like we're way too dependent on third party programs and third party tools, and it's
Hmm.
slowly, I think it's slowly killing the game. Like because it's just I don't know. I don't want to go into that because that's like a whole other discussion. But third party tools, it's just like when you install Path of Exile, this goes back to the thing that was said in chat very early on the stream. And I wish I remember who it was, but people want to log into Path of Exile. They want to play. They don't want to learn. And you know, just having to install acquisition, use PoE trade, going through the shops and everything. It's just there's a lot of things that you have to know how to do. And I also on top of that, frankly, I think it's annoying. Not only is it kind of annoying to the experienced players, right? But it's annoying to the new players, where when a new player says like, "Oh, hey, Wabacha, I really need a 5 link. How do I get a 5 link?" I'm like, "Well, just buy one. They're like 4 or 5. You could get one for like 3 chaos probably." And they're like, "What?" Like, and they just don't even understand. They're like, "I don't have that currency." I mean,
Yeah.
like
People
it's
think that they have
just
to find it to earn it.
right. Yeah, and it's like it's annoying for them that they get that kind of vague answer. It's like, well, just get it. And then it's annoying to the experienced players. It's like it's so easy. Like what is this difficulty that the people are having? And I think that kind of falls on GGG a little bit.
But I completely agree, 100% with what Nugi said. You should be 100% transparent. At the beginning, there's no reason to really withhold information. Think about how nice it would be if you like, not when you're just running around Twilight Strand, but like once you make it to your stash, if there was like some little marquee or some little tip of the day, hey, did you know PoE.trade is an excellent tool? Or hey, try
Hmm.
checking out the PoE item shops and forming your own shop of getting currency. And, just giving people those pieces of basic information that'll
Yes.
drastically increase their experience. I think that's huge. And it's just text, right? It's just a little thing like
Hmm.
tip of the day, consider setting up a shop and posting your items on the forum, and or
Hmm.
consider using this indexer to find items that you need with your currency. Just small little pieces of information that would go a long long way for new players. But
It would definitely help the player retention. Like
Hmm.
that's for
I
sure.
think if they insist on this being the system that they want to run with, they have to own up to it. Like they
yeah,
just have to own up to it and just get it out there.
yeah,
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, I think owning up to it's just like I know I've said this before, but if this is the system that we want, do it right.
Hmm.
Just push through, put your resources to making a trade system that works in game and an asynchronous trade system. Get that information to the players. Just do it. Like there are people that are on board with it. There's a lot of us. Like, veteran Path of Exile players, ex Diablo 2 players, even Diablo 3 players. When we come to this, we enjoy it. Like we want this, but when it's not working, it's painful. So
yeah. It's all in GGG's hand. It's like how much do they want to value. I mean, I think there's a lot of value in new players in a game that's been out for like 3 years. You know, it's important that you find those new players that are willing to explore and that have so much to learn, because a lot of the veterans are going to come back and play the newest thing and then be done with it, because they're very familiar with the game, and it's not very new or fresh. So they'll come explore the new stuff and then they'll go play something else. And new players, there's that long term potential that, and new players will learn and keep the economy afloat, where they're just like generating items, trading items, and that's important for everybody. That people that want to finish their builds, that these items are being generated so that they could trade for them. And if when players leave the league or players quit, these items aren't being generated and you can't finish builds, and then people get exhausted, and there's a certain threshold that people are willing to take before they call it quits. And there's a
Right.
lot of potential, just so much potential being lost in newer players because
Mhm.
they're just overwhelmed. They're just like, well, I suck, or I just don't have the time to do this, and they never get to that point where they can really evaluate, is this the game for me, or do I enjoy the complexity of this game?
Well, and so now since we're on this, the subject of like newer players and do they want to stay with the game? We also have the issue of experienced players leaving or taking breaks. And
Mhm.
so like you're a perfect example of this, Nugi. You do really well. You come back. You look at like content, and then like right now you're playing Hearthstone, which is
Mhm.
perfectly fine. Like I most people play other games too. There's nothing wrong with that. But so like what are your thoughts on helping keep that player retention even for high level players
Mm,
or
I think
experienced players?
one of the mistakes they made this league is just they made experience gains too high. That really discouraged me. I was like, okay, Etop is doing good. I'm like not that far behind him, but I don't know. It just like then it was like from 95 to 100 in like a week. I was like, okay, that was boring. There wasn't even I couldn't even shift gears if I wanted to, and then start catching up, right?
Hmm.
And so that took a huge part of my incentive of actually just trying to push for ladder. Just I didn't even want to be number one, just being like close or anything. But then I just saw how quickly it ramped up and how I remember the mapping system in the beginning really just was I don't know. It was like either you got the 82s or you didn't get like any XP, and it just felt kind of bad.
Feels bad, man.
Yeah, it felt a little bit. I don't know. Like my incentive to like push the ladder completely disappeared when he got 100 that fast. I'm like, okay,
What
that is
level
way
were
too
you
fast.
when
I
you
was 96 or something, I
Yeah, I think I
think.
was like 93. I agree. Once someone hits 100 in the league, it just I see kind of like a hype drop off. It's just like, how
Yeah.
did he? I mean, maybe what would the solution be? Increase map drop rates, but reduce the XP that you get out of it, and so that,
Mm,
I mean, what would you propose that would be a solution to this? But I mean, people already are complaining about the stagnant, the excruciating grind. But is, like, when we look at it, is it really a grind when someone can hit 100 in like a matter of a little over a week? Or
I think, as I see it, it's okay. So the grind to 100 is for the very, very few. Like very,
right?
very few will actually go for this. And I don't think it's really the most important thing about PoE. This is why I got discouraged in the beginning. But that's because there's not much else to do, right? Like, when you reach that level like when you reach that level of characters and play and all that, there's not much else to come like to do after that point. Sure, we can do it Siri all the time, but what is the purpose of a Siri? Like outside of the challenge, yeah, sure. Going for a Siri is fun, and going for Uber at Siri is extremely difficult on a hardcore environment, nearly impossible, like to actually do it. Um, but again, like that, realistically, that's as high up there as going for level 100. So okay, um, what was I trying to say here?
You were probably asking for like content after 100.
Yes, like or what are we trying to do? Like what is the purpose of all we're doing? Like we're trying to like achieve all these things and we're going for 100. How do I retain my interest for a long period of time? Well, racing is one of them, but racing has gotten kind of stale. Uh, Different content, making new builds, like farming, but it just seems everything is just pushed towards these high level maps, and I've just found that to be kind of boring.
You could be like Havoc and make your second level 100.
or
Yeah.
fourth or sixth?
No, I mean this league.
Yeah. Well, I thought, yeah, Havoc just leveled a character to 100 in under 4 days played. I think.
Yeah.
He did it in 4 days and 2 hours
Yeah.
played.
Well, yeah,
It's pretty insane.
yeah, it's pretty insane. Well,
Uh,
but see, I think that Tempest and Warbrands kind of did that a little
oh
bit.
yes, they did
Tempest,
something really
yeah,
great.
Tempest and Warbands, like the Tempest and kind of Tempest hunting, that makes maps interesting. And we've all kind of
Yes.
talked about that. Warbands, it seemed exciting, but it's turned out to be a little lackluster. I'm sure with some tweaks and changes, it could be much better.
Hmm.
And but Tempest at least made it to where, and I know I've said this before, that I didn't want to always just vendor all my maps or chisel or make all my maps into chisels because I wanted to keep my graveyards, because if
Hmm.
I got a good Tempest on the graveyard, I would just go in there. And on top of that, divination cards are something else that you could farm in specific maps. But I could still see, if you're level 100, there's very little reason for you to want to do that, right?
Hmm.
Like if you've already made that push to 100, chances are that was your goal. And once you've achieved it, even if there are Tempest, even if there are divination cards that you could farm, there's it's not incentive enough for you to go back to it. It's
Hmm.
close. It's closer than we've ever been, in my opinion, but not fully.
Like it really comes down to what is it you're trying, like what are you trying to do with your character after you reach high level? What are you actually trying to do? Are you trying to PvP? Man, if PvP was more, like, if there was more PvP going around, I would be playing a lot more. Just because you create a character, a high level character, maybe you go for 100. Like there's an incentive to get that edge, right? There's an incentive to make your character just that much better to when you go into PvP. We can look at the game that should not be named here, Diablo 3.
It could be
Um,
named.
Dude, I just
yes.
want
We have
to
no
hug
issues.
Nugi right now for what he's saying. I just want to go and shake his hand. Like this is what I've been saying this whole time, but the amount of hate that I get for this saying some, things like this. But go ahead. I
The
want to hear.
thing Diablo does well right now that PoE doesn't do well is that there is an ongoing ladder for the entire season. There's always something where you can marginally improve, right? Like they might not have a PvP. Like their greater risk system might not be the best, but that doesn't mean that they don't have any. Like, there's always the option of pushing it just a little bit further, which is something I think that is important to always have. There's always something like you can do your time like a second faster, so you're incentivized to go and farm a little bit more, get a little bit get a better gear, so you can do that slight improvement on your time. And you can look at the same thing with PvP. You can like increase your character just a little bit more to get that slight edge, and this is enough of an incentive to make you keep playing because there's always something to play for.
Oh man, I just love it, man. I'm just soaking it all in. This is the stuff that I always try to say. I mean, it's only as fun as your competition, and there's only so much satisfaction I can get out of playing against AI and
Hmm.
very predictable monsters. And I like the dynamic shifts that people can swap on the fly. And I know Nuki has experienced PvP, so I know he's not speaking out of his ass. Like he has dabbled in it. He's seen potential, but it really takes a rallying of people in a diverse, you know, competition to make it really, really, really fun and enjoyable. And
Hmm.
people are just so quick to shoot it down. But yeah, I mean, God, you just
I'm a
like,
skeptic. I won't lie.
yeah.
I have a hard time swallowing. Yeah, I'll just leave that. Yeah, I don't know, PvP and action RPGs.
But
It's
there's PvP in every video game.
right.
I mean, Hearthstone is PvP and it has PvE. Like any game can be turned, almost any game can be turned player versus player. And it
Hmm.
when you have like real intelligence behind the controller, it brings a dynamic, you know, wow, what do you call it? Very intelligent system that people can adjust. It's when people try to play something linearly, and I think a lot what draws a lot of people away from PvP is they try to take what they know in PvE and try to implement it in PvP, and it doesn't work, and they're like, well, this sucks. I'm getting dominated by this guy because they're not
Hmm.
thinking about it right. They're relying too much on their builds that have leech. which you should not expect at all in PvP, and they're relying on things like charges, which is very PvE oriented. Those two
Mm-hmm.
things are things that are really really bad in PvP, but are like the cornerstones of what makes good PvE builds. And I think that's a big problem, that people go in with their PvE builds and they just get shut down. They're like, oh, well, this is garbage. I'm getting one shot, or I don't understand this. But there are a lot of people, enthusiasts, that are constantly doing this, playing with all different kinds of builds against all different kinds of builds, and they're cycling through all these different counters and making swaps and things like that. But segueing away from PvP a little bit, there's also the other alternative that's a bit more popular, and it's racing. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to talk to you guys about, you know, Nugi's an experienced racer. He's done a lot of it, and he's done it well. And for me, I would consider myself a novice racer. I do race a little bit, just on the ones that I like. The types that aren't like the vanilla part of the game, like Descent Champions and Endless Ledge. I know a lot of people, a lot of the pro racers cringe at those. Um, but I wanted to take, what would you guys do? I mean, I have a couple of ideas of what I would like to do to racing to make it more popular. But I would like to start saying that, people are always advocating for that. Hey, can we just have races where we just clock in at whatever time convenient and we get the points? And I see, I think it was Carl or Chris, a long time ago. They said that the reason why they want live events is because you get that race feeling. When
Mm-hmm.
you see the global chats of, Hellman has entered whatever, this person's level or rank 1 at level this, or this person enters this zone, and that's like a feeling, a sensation that you get. But uh, I was gonna get your takes on, like, what if they were actually able to change racing in general so that you always had the alternative to do that. So let's say, hypothetically, you're only allowed to get demis in the live event. If you want to do it later, you can just do it for points or
Mm.
at a reduced rate. So that way you're at least getting experience, because a lot of racing and getting good at racing is being able to practice it. So if
Mm-hmm.
you like do it on your own time, you don't get as much reward, and it would have to, I guess, log the chat so that it would timestamp those global markers, or those achievements that people are getting during the race, so that when you're doing your race at a later time, you see Hellman, you still see
Oh,
that at that break
okay.
point.
So yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's
So it's
like,
kind of like, yeah, taking the chat of the global log and then implementing it when you're
mm-hmm.
doing your race, kind of like the idea of, how Mario Kart, they do, like, you're racing
Yeah, you
against
have
your
the
mirror.
ghost. Yeah,
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 yeah.
the ghost, yeah. Or you're playing like Trackmania. You see a
Mm-hmm.
ghost in chat, so that you can compare yourself at what position you're in, what progression you're at when someone else is this, or what people, what at what point do people start dying, and how many
Mm-hmm.
deaths do you see? So you retain that racing feeling by seeing the global chat, but at the same time, you're still able to practice a race, do it on your own time, but not necessarily win demis. I still
So
think
so
that,
basically, you're making it so that anyone can do the race at any point in time of their choosing, and they can. But could you then still get points?
yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know if it should be should you get 100% of the points, if you get 75% of the points, or
Mm-hmm.
like, if that needs to be balanced. But I feel like at least getting FaceTime and
I guess
competing
you
in
can
it.
get the points for like the level you obtain, but not the actual ranking. Like all the ranking stuff goes away, but you just from actually just participating and going to the certain level that you're required to do will give you the points. That could be a good idea.
Yeah, and somebody can, essentially get good, like, offline, and then when
Mm-hmm.
they actually show up, you have somebody like, Johnny Mock or something, and he's like, who the hell is this guy? Where did he come from? I've never seen this guy, but he's been like practicing on races that weren't on, like, at prime time. And then, you just have more competition, more contenders. I think
Mm-hmm.
it'd be good. And I mean, I would think it would have to take a little bit of programming to take the global logs and incorporate it into whenever you want to pick up the race. But there should be a threshold. You shouldn't have to wait a week, or you give it like 3 days to do the race or something like
Hmm.
that. But you should still incentivize the best players to show up. If the demi contenders to show up at the same time, because you still want that, you know, that
Hmm.
feeling. And I think people will for demis. I mean, a lot of people are
You
in
know
it
what
for
I would
demis.
like? I would like it so that you could collect. I don't know, like there should be for racing. I feel like it's one of the things that really discourages me from racing is the whole 24-hour thing. The
Same.
fact that you have to do it every single one of them to be competitive.
Yeah, no,
You
that's the
can't you
same thing
can't
for me.
you can't log into say, okay, I am an EU time zone, so these are available for me. Like that, if I could just do that, I would feel like, okay, I have to do this set of racing to be competitive of this month's ladder or this season's ladder, and that's it. I don't have to do 6 races a day or four or whatever at 4 a.m., 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and then 8 p.m. Like I can barely go out, and then I have to be back again to do another race, and then I have to wait 3 hours. I can get a cup of coffee, and then I'll have to be back for another race. I I feel like that's one of the biggest downfalls of racing because for for anyone to be incentivized to do a race, there has to be a carrot at the end, right? Like, you don't just want to race because you race. I remember in the closed beta where you got like a huge amount of currency. It was awesome. It was one of the best things ever. You just got like after you finished the race, you got like a stash full of fucking of
It's like your
currency.
bounty.
Yes, it was my bounty, and I wanted to go for that. Now it's like I collect points to get, I don't know, these maybe not too exciting, not too exciting,
Alternate art.
yes, rewards that are not they're not immediate, so I have to wait for them. Um, and I don't know, it just seems like a lot of work for not very much.
Yeah, the rewards are pretty lacking. And so one of the new rewards that we have is
Hmm.
the 100 point reward. Is it 50 or 100? But it's the alternate art jewel. And before you had the alternate art ring, which was I level 100.
Hmm.
So in your mind, you're like, well, if I ever got to the level of currency where I could foresee crafting this ring, fantastic. But there's who cares about alternate art on a jewel? Like no one cares about that.
I
The
wouldn't
only
say nobody. There's a lot of people that love
People care.
icons. Yeah.
well, okay, my opinion. I'm like, well, it's the point of it before was an item level 100 ring. Now it's just a jewel that there's no item level on it. Like,
I mean, people love exclusive MTX, and they love
Yeah.
separating themselves from the pack. I mean, while it might not be your cup of tea, a lot of people do care about it. And people, and you know how I know that is because how much people pay for these things. These pixels, essentially, they're like so exclusive, limited edition. Not many people have it, and in a game where items are everywhere, and it's a game about items. These things matter. When
Oh, I think it matters. I think
yeah.
the thing is, if you ever want to get 500 points, you have to play so much, especially if you're not an experienced racer. If you ever just want to get, like, let's say I want those gloves. Oh, they look cool. Good graphics right now, right? The 500 point gloves. Um, how many races do I realistically have to go through? Maybe like, I don't know, like let's say you get 5 points per race. You have to do 100 races. That's at least 100 hours.
But if you could
That's
pick and
that's
choose which
crazy.
races you do on your own time,
Yeah, that
that
would
could be a different
exactly that
story.
would help a lot. And if you could maybe pick the time, so make it so that you don't have to participate in everything, making it so like where you can only really participate if you go full no life and you don't have like a job or anything. Make it more like available for everyone. Make it more like available for people in their like time slot. I think that would do a lot to get more people into racing.
Yeah, they did separate PvP with EU and NA, and they did
Hmm.
accommodate a lot of those times, but that was mainly off the motivation because ping makes a difference, and it did,
Hmm.
uh, you know, latency was a pretty big deal as far as your ability to react. And it's kind of a shame that we don't see that in racing, but I kind of see what they're going. They want to get as many people participating at the same time. But honestly, I think if they could just take the global spam and just award the demis for people that show up at the
Mm-hmm.
actual event, and then just give points to the people and give practice to the people that have to work at that time or sleeping or doing whatever else. I think that would be very healthy for the race scene, and I don't think it would be unfair. I don't know. What do you guys think? Would it be fair, unfair, or
Let's take the
Uh,
schedule out of it.
well, yeah, taking some of the schedule out of it, like being able to do it at your own time at a reduced reward, or you know, being exempt
no,
from
I
being
think
able
it'd be
to
good.
win a demi, but still being able to do well for the race season. Like getting to your goal.
I mean, I
But
think the problem is like that's a really clear answer. Like no one's really going to disagree with that. I think a lot of people look at racing and they're like, okay, well, yeah, I could do this race, but I can't do these other races, so why am I going to bother? So I think what really needs to be done here is GGG, instead of trying to work on so many aspects at once, they need to take a step back and prioritize which ones they need to do. Because there's just so many things. And like between racing and trading and the challenge leagues, like, yeah, having racing be where you could do it anytime that you want and, you don't have to, like, yeah, exempt me from the demigods, right? Like, that's a great idea. But the problem is, there's just so much more to moving the game forward than just that.
One thing I would like to see in regards to player retention, especially for high level ones, make some racing for high level characters. Make some kind of event on a weekly basis where you get to test out your character, the best character you have, and you just go to like a gauntlet, and it just keeps throwing shit at you, and you just have to survive on your own, and that's it. And
oh,
then
that'd
just
be sick.
yeah,
You mean like
and
import your PVE character? Is
yeah,
that what you mean?
yeah. You
From the
select a
challenge league?
character. Yeah, this character from my challenge league will be my like gauntlet character or whatever, and they can just throw whatever they want at you. They can even throw a Siri at you at like double like damage at Siri, like anything. It doesn't matter. It just has to be so crazy that your character has to be like out of this world to compete. And you can have one for hardcore and you can have one for softcore, because obviously those like there's a difference in those two. But like, so you can have the best of the best for the hardcore and the softcore, and then maybe at the end of the season you can even have the top five or whatever from both, and then you have like you clash both softcore and hardcore together, and you can have like a big yeah, a big showdown.
Yeah, I mean, what World of Warcraft? They even went so far to putting a ladder on how fast you could clear an instance.
Mm-hmm.
Like they did like 5-man heroics and things like that. I don't. I think that would be kind of cool. Like a timestamp on a full clear or something. I don't know. It's just that's probably a lot of programming and a lot of ingenuity. But
You
what?
don't even have like, just look at Endless Ledge. You can do something like that. How far can you go? And the ramp up is like huge. You just make it so the ramp up is like insane.
Yeah, you'd have to put a lot of map mods on it. Like every ledge you go
Yeah,
through, you
yeah,
get
yeah,
one additional map mod, but
yeah,
everybody has to get the same map mods in the same order. But
yeah. You just do that.
Well,
That's fine.
hasn't it been like something like that's been suggested before? You have like a tower and you just like kind of keep going up the
Mm-hmm.
levels and whoever. And I don't know. I think there's something like that that exists like that in Diablo 3 already. I mean,
But this is
well,
the kind of incentive. This is the kind of thing because it's like a weekly competition.
right.
It's a, when 100 is gone. What do you do then? And even if you're not competing for the top spot, you're trying to improve your character.
Yeah.
There's always something you can do. There's always like
There's
a
always a piece of
next
gear
step.
you could define.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess that recreational things you can do like PvP and PV racing. Those are definitely opportunities. They just got to make a lot of correct decisions, and they need to I don't know, I guess emphasize on I don't know what I was thinking. But well, out of all the races, what do you guys find the most fun, and which ones do you avoid like the plague? I mean, I think we have all different kinds of races here, but
I love Endless Ledge, and
Yeah,
I hate the fixed seed.
you hate fixed seeds, but like
Yes,
no matter what, every season.
I detest it. Ever since they put that in, my enjoyment of racing has gone down tenfold.
I like
Really,
Endless Ledge, and I don't mind Fixed Seed. I don't like Descent.
really.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of Descent, but I'm just let's be clear. Let's be clear about this. Like, I don't like Descent because I'm garbage at it. Like, I don't like Descent. I don't. The thing is, I don't really take the time to learn the paths I want to do, or I just don't bother with that. I just want to go. I don't know. It's because I'm lazy. It's more like a player flaw rather than the race itself is probably, well, it's obviously a good race. People really enjoy it.
But
And I do all right in it. I just
since we
whatever.
have such diverse opinions, like I want to go back what Nugi said. Why don't you like fixed seed? Is it because everyone gets the map revealed, or like what's your beef with it?
There's like different layers because the fixed seed is always the what's it called the signature race.
Hmm.
I think every time
Yeah.
I don't know, like I haven't done every season, but so if you ever die in a fixed seed race, because it comes in like there's like a few things to it. If you die, you lose, like you don't get any points. So there's that. Like every at any point in time you don't make it through, uh, you you pretty much lose all progress, and you feel like there's not even a point to using these 55 minutes out of the 1 hour of your time, and you feel like it's just been taken away from you. That sucks. That's like the game, and it's okay, but it kind of does suck. Um, every time it just becomes this, just go for as glass cannon a build and just push for the time you can. Um, I don't know, and you can even see like if you don't get the right shrine or if you don't get the right whatever by this point in the game, you might as well just stop because you know what's ahead. You know that if you're not on time, this whole race is like pointless because it's just about getting the I don't know. I don't know. It's I just don't.
Yeah,
It,
it's not for you.
it's just not for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Also,
Like, there's nothing wrong with that opinion. It's not for you.
I just don't like it being the same thing every time. I don't know.
See
There's
that
no. Hmm.
when you say that, like that's kind of how I feel about racing in general. Like I don't enjoy the Twilight Strand to Hillock, or to Hillock to Brutus to Mervale. Like I don't enjoy doing that vanilla portion of the game over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
and moving slow really deters me. I try to do my best to get out of that phase, like with
Mm-hmm.
the temp leagues, because I like to move fast. I like to gun and go, and the reason why I like Endless Ledge is because I don't have to worry about recipes. I don't have to worry about going to town.
Mm-hmm.
I just pick up and make the best of a shitty situation, and it's not like something that I do like in the normal part of the game. It's not the vanilla portion, and I feel like in order for me to get into like racing where you're like killing bosses and stuff, I'd have to have a different starting point. I'd
Mm-hmm.
have to be like accelerated. That's why I like Descent Champions, because you get these rations, or these
Mm-hmm.
boxes as chests, and you get lots of currency. That's really fun to use, and hold on to make really good decisions with just
Yeah.
picking up shit and going. And it's very very fast paced, and I get so deterred about finding different, or running into dead ends. I know there's a lot of skill and just memorization of certain layouts, and that does play a huge part of the skill, but I personally can't stand doing the Twilight Strand, the Brutus, that run over and over and over again. If they started you in like
Mm-hmm.
Act 4, gave you like 4 chests, you just like
Mm-hmm.
loot explosion, make go with whatever character. I think that would be so fun, and then it'd be like kill Dominus, or go to start in Act 3, um, kill dominance at a certain level. But I don't know. It'd have to be something different for
Hmm.
me to get into racing, as far as fixed seed and all those other things that they do. But anything that it's like different from the regular part of the game, I do enjoy.
I feel like this the signature race just it has a lot of elements that if you don't complete it and you don't get the top one time, it just feels pointless. Like you don't get the points. And also, I've just if you have the standard format and you don't even have like you don't even explore the map, it just becomes kind of stale because it's every time it's the same thing. There's nothing exciting about it. Like there's no like, I don't know. It's just not. Like, I think taking the map element out of it is just too much in the basic format.
Hmm. It's supposed to be seen as like the most competitive. It's like the Swiss version of racing, right? Fixed seed. That's its attempt to
So
make.
level the playing field.
Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
attempt to level the playing field. But yet, I mean, how many other people do you know that feel this way too about fixed seed?
I know that Fixie is one of the least popular um what's it called formats in the game. Like you can just see the player like turnouts.
Oh
There's
wow.
very it's very low. When you see Endless Ledge, there's a very high turnout. And when you see Fixie and the signature race, it's very low. Um, but like the signature races is for the top tier racers to compete, and I can understand that. And I think the fixed seed was a spawn of like how to combat map hacks, which was very rampant for a long time in the races. I think so. I'm not entirely sure on this. This is basically just like I don't know.
Previous experiences.
Yeah, but
Yeah, well,
it came after a lot of that.
yeah. I
What's the
mean,
lump sum?
racing can be improved. I mean, yeah, that would help a lot of things. This all kind of comes back to player retention. What keeps people playing the game, and I don't know. There's just a lot. Something that I've actually been kind of thinking of recently is that the community is a little too divided with all the different ways you could play. So what you could PvP, well, PvP, you could PvP,
Hmm.
you could race, you could play challenge leagues, you could play hardcore, but who does that? I mean, just the permanent hardcore, and you could play standard, and that's just so many different areas for people to be interested in. And we don't have like a large player base. It's not small, but
Mm.
we have a lot of things that kind of divide the community and what they want.
Yeah, it's very tribal.
Yeah,
They're like, oh,
and I
we're
think
the
that kind of
racing
hurts.
crew.
I think that kind of hurts player retention a little bit. It's just like,
Yeah.
well, I can't get together with the PvPers. I can't get together with the people who really want to race. I can't get together with the people who want to map. It's just I don't know.
People are finding their way of playing Path of Exile. I mean, and
That's
some things
great.
that we
It's their
included.
path.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
But I think crafting is or accumulating wealth. That's another game for people, and
Right.
just paying attention to economics, trends, making business decisions or whatever. That's another way to play. But what keeps me interested. I mean, I've been playing nonstop for 3 years. I really haven't taken any breaks. Just exploring different things and uh, going so far as to making wonky builds or testing builds, and then like I get to a point where trading becomes really, really like a nuisance, and that's when the game becomes unfun for me. Is when people start leaving the league, then it starts spiraling out of control, and items aren't being generated, or it's a pain in the butt to get a hold of somebody that has an item that you need. And I've gone through like leaps and bounds sometimes just to get certain items, and it's crazy. Like, and it gets exhausting when I have to do that because I have a certain standard of the rate I get or accumulate items that I need for my build, and I can tell as the leagues age that it gets harder, and I have to put more effort into polishing out builds. And I like to play finely tuned, min maxed, and if I can't get to that phase, then it becomes unfun for me. So then I tend to go where the trading is at. So
Lot
did
to
you guys
to
want
dwell on.
to take
Well,
any questions from chat or?
I think we're actually about to run out of time anyway, because I know you have to leave. So,
Yeah, I
all
mean,
right.
I got a little bit if you want.
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah. Go for it.
What?
Hedgie has a few questions that he pulled from chat while we're doing that. We'll go ahead and close it off
Oh,
here.
I was asking if you wanted to take any
Oh,
questions. So if you guys have any questions
well, yeah, yeah.
and
Let's
you
do
want to
that.
direct it to any one of us, or if you want to direct it at all of us, just let us know. Pop it in chat. Let me scroll up and see if anybody's asked something. Johnny Mark asked something, but I'm not gonna read that.
I was actually going to do this, but you had a pretty long-winded response at one point. I was like, oh shit. Just kept going. Um,
The race rewards need to be applicable to any of your stuff in any league. I'm not sure what DNMR is saying about that.
Well, okay. So the race rewards is, and this is one of the places where I think they took a step back. Is where they keep delaying the time to where you can actually take out race rewards and leagues and stuff like that. So if you go into a race season and you do well and you get like a race reward, if you're in a temporary league, you can't take it out for like a month.
Yeah, but that's intended so it doesn't disturb
Yes,
the economy.
I know, but it also takes, in terms of raising incentives, takes away from that. There's no incentive to do something for a week that you're not gonna see in like 3 weeks.
I don't know. I found the Malagaros and the Rumi's concoction. I like that a lot. I mean, those are very relevant to endgame uniques. 1 month, I
Yeah.
guess it's just relative to the person on how
Mm-hmm.
long they plan on playing the leagues. But I think 1 month is okay, and I see that as an incentive. But it really has to be a good unique for you
Yes.
know me to shoot for that. Like Rumi's
Yes.
concoction, Malagaros. This league was unleashed into our league. I saw a lot of them pop up as soon as they were unlocked because people were just wanting some fast currency, and I
Mm-hmm.
ended up buying a couple pairs. But
well, okay, so I have a good question here actually. Ollie 5000 said, "Do you think there are too many builds that require top level uniques or perfectly rolled rares to run those builds? And if you can't run those builds, a lot of higher level content is restricted to you." So yeah, fire away. What do you guys think of that? I kind of think there might be, but
I think restrictions are okay because what Chris said is they like when you have different characters to achieve different things. Like you might run a physical based attack character and then a spell based elemental character, and you can run certain maps, to have a different character to do a different task. If you want to MF on a certain character, if you want to kill at Siri on a certain character, I think restrictions are good because it incentivizes you to make more characters and it increases the longevity. It's when you try to do everything on one character that really needs to be looked at, like the builds that just handle everything for very little cost. And I think that's a I think it's okay to have really strong builds if they take a long time to build up to, like if they're expensive and there's something to aspire to. But when you can do a build that does everything and you can do that for very cheap, I think that's what I would consider broken or imbalanced.
I don't think there's too much of a I think it's good that we have things that are hard to obtain. I don't think at all that we need best in slot uniques to be able to do endgame content. If you're smart about it, there is plenty of builds out there with limited resources you can do. And then if you have the resources, you can even do even crazier stuff. So I think it's fine, and I especially with they as I see it right now, they've made it more available getting build enabling uniques.
Right.
right? Like
Mhm.
with Shabs and with Mjolnir and with
Well, those are specific build enabling, not like all encompassing build enabling.
well, they open up a variety of builds, and
Hmm.
they've done more, it seems, to open up that variation of builds. Like whenever there's like a whole archetype behind something, they've made it more available, which is good, I think. Overall, I don't think that it's that endgame builds are too gated behind items. No, I don't think so.
Right. I think what may have actually given a lot of players the impression of that was just, the start of these challenge leagues. Everyone wanted a lightning coil. Lightning coils
Hmm.
were rare. Lightning coils got really expensive. So it's just like, I can't progress because I'm going to get dunked by anything that does physical damage unless I have a lightning coil or a
Hmm.
2000 armoral astral plate. Like, it was just, I think it was an impression that was given to the players, especially the players that are a little bit more inexperienced and the new players, because there are definitely players that have been playing the game, since Torment or Bloodlines, or since Sacrifice of the Veil, who still haven't been playing the game as long. And due
Hmm.
to how the game works, people kind of come and go. You play a league, you leave, you take a break, you come back, blah 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 blah. So those players who've been playing since Sacrifice of the Veil, they may not have even had the experience to recognize that there are definitely ways to work around the game without a lightning coil and an astral plate. And on top of that, when you have an entire community kind of just raving about how strong an item is, hence lightning coil, it kind of puts this like into your mind subconsciously that you need one.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
on top of that, the price of it also makes you think that, like, well, it's expensive. It must be really good.
Yeah, but like on another note, not that I feel this way, but just objectively, like okay, so that player is running into that situation. Okay, I need a lightning quill. Now, what are his options? His options are to either quit or to find a way to earn currency, like either maybe roll an MF or find some other way or save. It doesn't it incentivize that player to work at it so that he can save up to buy a lightning quill? And doesn't it give him like a goal to achieve instead of just like getting a lightning quill right away, doing all the end game content and be like, all right, I'm bored. I'm gonna go play Hearthstone or I'm gonna go play Diablo or something. Like doesn't that aren't goals important to set
Yes.
for players,
They are,
to
but
increase the longevity?
I think the threshold of that goal is a little too high.
Yeah,
I
I can agree to
think
that too.
I think the community as a whole, like I think there's a part of the community that was outraged about physical damage and lightning coils. I just think they got it wrong. In all honesty, I think that there was, and this is where, as a developer, I think you should not listen to the community because, at least to some extent, because there were so many other viable builds, people just didn't bother figuring them out. Everyone was on the coil hype train, and there were so many other things you could have done, and you could have done 82 maps without a coil. Maybe not the triple damage mod 82 maps, but you could have gotten to 82 maps with a more budget version.
Cloak of Flame.
But Cloak of Flame, like I can mention so many different variations you could do, and you could make them really really good. Coil was just what people knew about, and if they couldn't get it, they got upset, and that's just too bad.
I would like to see, like, I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but I would like to see a caster version of a coil where it took an element and had some other kind of drawback, but a chess piece so that you couldn't stack it with coil, of course. But I'm very annoyed that it's so hard to roll blues on a coil. And as a caster, you're like, well, I want that physical mitigation. Like a better version of Cloak of Flame would be amazing, like more ES or something. I
Mhm.
think Cloak of Flame is in a good spot. It just needs I need a higher end version with a bit more base, whatever. If it wants to go armor ES or just pure ES, but
A lot of
some
go sorry.
counter so that I don't have to burn like 1,000 chromes on a quill to get like 4 blue.
A
I
lot
think
of
that's
a lot of people right now are saying Cloak of Defiance. I mean, Cloak of Defiance was good, but it was never mitigation. It was effective HP, and that's kind of the difference. But you got Arctic armor with it, which
Um,
was really really good. But
it, if
it worked.
when you can regen to a source, you can look at that as mitigation.
Right.
You have to look at regen as mitigation, and
True.
since you can regen to two sources now, it becomes mitigation just from that.
Right.
But even with the damage increase, like drastically, Fizmit, just damage across the board, I feel a lot of this stems from Immortal Call. That that
Hmm.
being changed, people now feel vulnerable. They were used to playing with like next to physical immunity. You take one hit and you're good for like the next 5 seconds. That was such a staple in every build. That 3 red combo that could just, or that 4 red, 4 link that every character almost had, and there was almost no reason to not run it unless you were like really exercising a really long immortal call. But that stemming with the damage increase, people are like, "Oh my god, I need physical mitigation," and I don't know. I feel Immortal Claw is in a pretty shitty spot. Um, there's no reason to self cast it at all anymore.
Hmm.
It's even investing into both duration. They've made the pathing even further. So, I mean, Immortal Call, Vol Immortal Call, it's pretty dead to me as far as self casting. That's very very disappointing for me.
I think they could do better at like I think they could we kind of need some physical mitigation for casters. I do agree on that. There are, or maybe we don't. Maybe that's just not maybe that archetype just doesn't need that. Maybe that's not how it's supposed to be played. Like you can get huge life pools with like ES and hybrids and CI and all that. The physical mitigation is a very um, like it doesn't there's not too much variance. When you get hit, like you get hit for a certain amount. Physical damage is almost always the same. So if you can take the physical hit, well then you're fine. You can just see your life pool go down. But it rarely spikes as much as something like lightning damage. So I don't see many people actually dying from physical damage.
Right.
Yes, it's you feel like you're in danger and you do have options, but I don't see it killing many
Whoa.
people.
I
Totally an
think
accident.
I think at series second phase, the trio is a big
Yes.
change. That is like that is where you feel naked,
Mm,
compared to having the old Immortal Call, and that's probably the most threatening fight as far as like physical mitigation
yeah.
and builds, and I feel that that fight is gated the most. Like we used to be able to make it work with almost any character, deathless if you had the responsibility of maintaining your charges, but that one severely limits on what you can do and
Hmm.
safely and being able to repeat that process. um, I think that's a big difference.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Nugi, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. If you want to go ahead and let everyone know what you're doing and plug yourself, go for it.
Sure. Right now, I'm playing Hearthstone, so you can come over after this and follow me there. I will probably be back for the 1 month and doing some support shenanigans with Empire's Grasp. That's has been at least that's my intention for now. So look forward to that if you're only in it for the PoE contest or content. Anyways, it's been a pleasure being on and talking to both of you.
Yeah, thank you. And Hedgie, go for it.
Yeah, I'm just like a PoE streamer mainly, and I love the game and I love talking about it. This podcast is great. It allows me to pick the brains of many polished gamers, and I will be doing a lot of content on YouTube in the near future. If you're needing a 1 month build to play, or I'd like to do a lot of fun, fast clearing builds. So, and I like to balance them out for hardcore. So if that is of any interest to you, come check out my YouTube channel. And I do stream daily on Twitch TV.
And obviously, I'm Wabacha. You can check out my YouTube channel. This video will be on YouTube for the people who were not able to catch it live. Nugi, again, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Hedgie, as always, thanks. And thank you guys for stopping by, and we'll see you guys later.
Later.
Later. Boom, 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 boom. What do I want to do here?